There's been an extraordinary muddle over the last weekend about the health of Donald Trump, and it's not the first extraordinary muddle involving death. So let's begin with a blunt fact. Reform UK managed to select a candidate for the mayor of Croydon. They managed to select a person who had been dead, a woman who had been dead for 6 months, Sharon Carby. She had been 70 years old in Bradford. She passed away in September 2024, yet was imposed by Reform's national headquarters on its Croydon branch in early 2025. At a selection meeting of fewer than 10 members, some had clearly taken a drink, others objected that she was no longer alive. They were dismissed with abuse. One member declared, "I haven't met her, but I've been told she's absolutely brilliant." It's political necromancy of a peculiar English variety, and it's not the first time. Reform had previously sacked its York candidate, Tommy Corkwell, for inactivity, only to discover that his inactivity had been caused by his death. "We can't afford to have people doing nothing in an election year," sniffed Reform HQ, before sheepishly apologising to his family. And one must be forgiven for thinking that Reform has hit upon a new strategy. Only the dead can be relied upon not to make racist remarks, endorse cannibalism, or demand criminals' organs be harvested, all offences for which living candidates have had to be dropped. This, remember, is a party that trumpets common sense vetting, but common sense has been redefined to mean that death is no bar to selection. In fact, it may now be a positive asset, a guarantee that the candidate will never contradict Farage on GB News or defect to another splinter party. It all recalls the end of El Cid, the Spanish hero dead on a horse, strapped into a saddle and sent riding off to rally the troops out of history into legend. Reform UK's approach is similar. Prop up the corpse, wave the flag, and hope the electorate is too dazed by the spectacle or too drunk to notice. Now compare this to Russia. Putin's elections are also contests of the dead, if not in body, then in spirit. Candidates eliminated, opposition silenced, the ballot itself drained of vitality, and in that sense Reform has managed almost comically to parody the authoritarian stage management of Moscow in a Croydon pub, but without the smeg fridge. And then to Africa. This past weekend, "Trump is dead" trended on Twitter. The rumour began with his silence on Labour Day, his blank schedule, and his absence from the cameras. Trump, ever the showman, reappeared in a MAGA cap with his granddaughter, as if to say, like Mark Twain, that reports of his death had been greatly exaggerated. But rumours expose something deeper. The death of a candidate, or the idea of it, plays very differently depending on timing. To die before a nomination, as Sharon Carby did, is an administrative farce. To die during an election campaign would trigger chaos. Remember the Trump era. To die in office is tragedy wrapped in constitutional crisis. And that's why speculation about Trump's mortality is so febrile. At his age and under his stress, it cannot be dismissed. So here we are, in Croydon, Reform selecting the dead to avoid embarrassment. In Moscow, Putin reanimating a hollow political system. In Washington, Trump obliged to prove he's still breathing. Across these democracies, fragile, failing or fake, the line between life and death is blurred into political theatre. Reform may yet boast the only party where the dead are less damaging than the living. That is less a strategy than a morbid confession.